Well, we know that there has been an executive order issued by the Biden administration to explore a central bank digital currency. It's a mandate. Tom Emmer, the chief Republican whip, he agrees with you. He says if you don't think the Fed is pursuing a CBDC, think again. Tweeting about that and also showing a document that was shared with his team showing that a CBDC is one of the 7 key duties of the Fed that was distributed to members of Congress. And, Lynette, we've certainly seen this tremendous growth in the number of countries actively pursuing a CBDC. According to the latest data from the Atlantic Council, 134 countries representing 98% of global GDP are exploring a CBDC. Just 4 years ago, that number was only 35. It's a dramatic increase. Now, you mentioned this idea of negative interest rates. One of the so-called proponents or positive, depending on your viewpoint, of CBDCs is that they say it allows you to fine-tune monetary policy, meaning it's programmable, so it could just be sort of sucked out of the system at once, and it sort of eliminates the need for interest rates. We are getting reassurances, though, from at least Republicans that this is against and contrary to the ethos of America and the American people. And people say that this is like political cyanide. Any sort of politician coming out in support of this openly, for people that understand what it is obviously not going to be viewed very favorably. But you're saying that that obstacle sort of gets eliminated through a crisis or through, how does that get addressed?
Well, go back to 2008. That wasn't that long ago. And the whole country went up in arms with that $800 billion bailout. But Congress did it anyway, didn't they? Because the crisis would justified that behavior. Now, if the next time and I was there in 1987 on Black Monday, so I know what a stock market implosion looks like and feels like and tastes like, because I was a new stockbroker when that happened. And that justifies a big enough crisis that scares enough people, justifies all of a sudden giving people, well, look what happened during, the Cerveza crisis, amazingly 4 years ago now, right? And all the money that they pumped into the public hands to spend, that's going to enable the entrance of a US CBDC. But it's got to be a big enough crisis. And so it's got to be obvious. It's got to have impact, immediate impact. And then you'll see how fast Congress will change tunes. And all of a sudden, the US CBDC will be given to everybody. And I do want to say that in a number of those countries that have been experimenting with the CBDCs, they're not necessarily getting public buy-in. Now, China is an exception to that, but Nigeria is a country that tried to issue the CBDCs, but they didn't get the public, but 5% of the public to participate. So they created Crisis in order to get higher participation. Don't buy it, right? But if all you have is inside the system and the system implodes and you lose your income and you lose your wealth, and they give you these CBDCs for free, you're going to go out and spend them. The question is, will you get any new money that you get? Will you put it back into the CBDC? Will you adopt it? If you don't have food, water, energy security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, which is arguably the most important piece anymore, and shelter, you're not going to have choices because you're going to be beholden to whatever they want you to do. And that fine tuning, they said it. We can have a finger on the economic button 24/7. So they want you to spend. We're it's the consumers that are being tasked with supporting all of this garbage that they've created. Because we've been witnessing this consistent and steady risk transfer from the few to the many. from the old hands that used to buy treasury bonds to the new hands, the mutual funds and the individuals. This is hot money. So when enough risk has been transferred to the public, I'm telling you, you'll see it. That's when it will become too expensive to support this game, but they are working voraciously at getting those CBDCs everywhere in the world, even though the public in many places has spoken and do not want them. They will cram it down our throats. And unless you have something that is truly outside of the system, what choices will you have? None. You're going to have to do, there's your social scoring. You're going to have to do what they want you to do.
And those things outside of the system, you're saying, are gold and silver.
Well, they're the only ones that are undervalued, right? And severely undervalued, because this is real money. And so is gold. So is silver. This is all real money. And they want you to believe in their fake money. But, I have a $100 trillion Zimbabwe note here. Yep. No, 10 trillion. $10 trillion Zimbabwe note.
What's 90 trillion between friends, Lynette?
It's nothing. And actually, 10 trillion or 100 trillion times zero?
Yeah, exactly.
Zero. Doesn't matter. And you can't buy 3 eggs with this.
So this crisis, again, is this a financial crisis, or do you think it's a geopolitical crisis that leads to a financial crisis, as we see so many potential geopolitical flashpoints around the globe? What do you think this crisis is that takes us there?
I think the true crisis is the financial crisis, and the geopolitical aspect of it, so wars, etc., and also energy issues, women's rights issues, civil rights issues, inflation, the higher inflation. All of these are indicative of a system reset. So it distracts you. You get enough chaos going around over here. You're looking here or you're looking there, and it divides us, right? I've done enough traveling to know that basically everybody wants the same thing. They want a safe place to live. They want to be able to, do their work and find joy and happiness and be able to raise their children, etc. They want a calm life. But all of this geopolitical activity is divisionary, right? So now we have enemies that we can point fingers to and we're not pointing fingers out where it really matters, which is the central banks and their money printing, and the government and their money spending. Because it's not them that has to make that money, it's us, the people, that are paying with our purchasing power and with our wealth.
Yeah, divide and conquer, as they say.
Exactly.
Lynette, what do you say to those, and I know you disagree with this, but what do you say to those that say gold, yes, silver, yes, but another way to potentially opt out of the system, Bitcoin, or maybe other cryptocurrencies?
Okay. Now, we need to be really frank about this, because I've studied currency life cycles forever, and they need things normal. So my personal belief, especially after reading the 1996 NSA, which is a government agency white paper on how to create a mint, is that Bitcoin was the Trojan horse. And I don't think it was a coincidence that it came out in January of 2009 and quantitative easing started in March, because they need to have things look as normal as possible so that you don't know that anything has changed, when in reality, everything has changed. Now, going back to the Bank for International Settlements money flower, there is a very small place for private cryptocurrencies that do not travel or under the purview of central banks. There's a much larger space for commodity money, so gold and silver. So there will be some private ones that survive. But But the visibility that Bitcoin has gotten in its first run up to 70,000 and inside the ETFs, people that buy gold and people that buy cryptocurrencies have the same kind of, typically, unless they're trading, have the same kind of concerns and mentality. In other words, they're trying to do something that's outside of the system. Michelle, do you really think that Bitcoin is outside of the system now?
Look, I have raised this as a personal point of concern that bringing Bitcoin ETFs does bring Bitcoin back into the traditional financial system, which it was supposed to be an alternative to. I personally have raised this as being contrary to the decentralized, independent ethos of Bitcoin, which, as you say, appeals to the same libertarian mentality that sees the debasement and devaluation of fiat currency and wants to find an alternative. So I do flag that as a big concern that, yes, it's good for the price and it's maybe good for adoption, but it's not so good if you're looking for Bitcoin to be an alternative to the system. But you're saying that Bitcoin, in your opinion, and I'm assuming that this is speculation, was designed in order to normalize the idea of digital currencies for people, bring it into the private sector, create adoption to lay the groundwork for a central bank digital currency.
Yes, that is my very strong opinion. Having read enough of the documentation and knowing that they know how to make this transition. And I was there in 1971. And my parents were really bright, and my aunts and uncles were really bright. When they completely took us off the gold standard, nothing's going to change. If you buy U.S. made, American made products, you're not going to be impacted by this inflation. Don't worry. This is just temporary. And here we are, how many years later? Not so temporary.
Well, Lynette, what specifically in what you've read is leading you to believe this? Do you have, because you're very meticulously well researched.
The NSA white paper, anybody can get it. I believe it was 1996 on how to create a mint. And if you read that white paper, so much in there looks so much like cryptocurrencies.
Does that, though, necessarily mean, just to play devil's advocate here, because we don't know the identity of Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, and what you're saying has been floated that maybe he was part of, the NSA. So you're saying that your belief based on that NSA paper is that Satoshi Nakamoto was a government operative?
And possibly, in my opinion, it's a Trojan horse because you also look at the timing of when it came out, which was January.
Well, after the financial crisis, and the paper would state because of the collapse of the system, there was a need to create an alternative for the people. But you're saying that that's a decoy.
Oh, I do believe it's a decoy. Yes, absolutely. Because we've also had enough occurrences of currencies resetting into different systems. And what they say is we have to keep it looking as normal as possible. So yeah, they needed to develop these cryptocurrencies, get them out there, let them run, right? Get them visible to the public. All right, well, what's the difference between a cryptocurrency or a CBDC? Or to the point of Powell, when you look at your statement, the money that's digital, right? It's about normalcy. They've been moving us in this direction since the 50s. This isn't something that they do overnight, because if they do things overnight, you see that, you notice it, you're going to protect yourself. If it happens over a period of time, and it's genius. How much money would have gone into physical gold had Bitcoin not been there? And I've been watching it since it was $7 a coin. And I'd also point out on the cryptocurrencies, what color are all of those imaginary coins? They're gold or they're platinum.